Hey guys, thanks for swinging by the channel today. Today we're going to talk briefly about the idea or the concept of boundaries. It seems as though in the social media world, boundaries is a word or a concept that comes up regularly or even fairly frequently. The question is, what are boundaries? And the idea is that they get implemented in all kinds of ways. Boundaries is a very interesting topic, and so we hope to shed a little bit of light on this. In the clinical world, we oftentimes focus on the concept of boundaries as really being able to express our wants or our desires and our needs in regards to other people and relationships. This could be with a coworker, could be with a boss, could be with a romantic relationship even. The concept of boundaries in our world is the idea of sharing what we might be comfortable with and what we're not comfortable with. So one of the things that I wanted to do today was just simply discuss kind of a very rudimentary or basic way to determine whether or not a boundary would be a healthy boundary. The way that I use it was initially presented to me, I think, working with youth or even kids and teenagers. So I oftentimes refer to it as the boundary house. The idea of this is you have a house and there is somebody who is appropriate to be at the front door. There are some people you might allow into the home and into the different areas of the home. So oftentimes what I will do is pull out a whiteboard and talk with folks about who are the types of people that might be okay to have at the doorstep, and we may have a conversation with them, but we don't allow them into the home. Think for a moment about who these types of folks are that you would be willing to have a conversation with on the doorstep or at the porch, but that we probably would not invite into the home. As I think about this, this might be a door-to-door salesman, somebody who comes over trying to sell some kind of product. Perhaps it's a neighbor that we don't know well. I know occasionally I have had folks come over to my house and knock on the door, not intending to come in, but because they've kicked a ball into my backyard or something like that. There are certain people who we should keep at that level where we'll have a conversation with you. It's appropriate to ask some information, but maybe we don't divulge all kinds of information. And that would be the healthy and appropriate response. There are some other people that we may invite into our home, and maybe they get to stand in the doorway or even sit at the front room of the home. Who might these folks be? These might be neighbors. These might be folks that we know or that we recognize from specific places that we are affiliated with. This could be things like a social club or a church group, or maybe even, depending on whether or not we're enrolled in higher education, that might be friends coming over for a group project that we spend time with. The idea of this in an emotional context is there are people that we may say hello to. We may have entry-level conversations with, and we might know some of the interests or things that are important to them, but that's about it in those conversations. The next level that I describe in this boundary house is the people that can come into our home and they may be able to wander to most areas of the home. When I explain it to teenagers, this might even be the people that can go in and raid your fridge or your kitchen and you don't worry about that, or you're totally fine with it. Teenagers oftentimes identify this group of people as their best friends. They wouldn't care if somebody came over and took a soda out of the fridge. In an emotional context, these might look more like our best friends. These are people that we know more information. We might know about many of the challenges that they're experiencing. We might know some family drama. We might know things that they're struggling with, mental health wise or otherwise. And it would be appropriate to have these conversations with some of our best friends. The last level that I usually discuss in this boundary house with my clients is going upstairs to the bedroom. And there are some people that we do that with. This can get a little bit tricky with teenagers because oftentimes teenagers feel like the place to hang out whether they're studying or not, is the bedroom, because they may have siblings that are running through the kitchen or watching TV. And so this one always gets a little bit tricky with teenagers. But who are the folks that we let into the bedroom? Obviously not the door-to-door salesman, and maybe even not the local neighbor, right? But there are specific romantic relationships that may come in there. Maybe parents are able to come into the bedroom. Also keeping in mind, parents, that as you age, there is a need for privacy, and that's important too. So the reason that I share this idea or this concept of the boundary house is because oftentimes, even as an adult, it can be tricky to figure out which boundaries are appropriate and which are not. This often is something that we see in conversations. So I just wanted to share one example that I think is helpful, that might be able to guide the relationship. As a therapist, in my office, we often have conversations that we might not have with the pest control salesman. I know a lot of information about a lot of people, right? The idea is that if I come to your home, which I arguably should never do, if I were to knock on the door as your therapist, I probably should be treated as the pest control salesman. You don't let me into the home, because that's not our relationship. But I wanted to throw out there something that's very important from the clinical perspective is, just because I am your therapist doesn't mean I get to know all of your information the first time that I meet you. It's very important that as we engage in therapy, that you learn to trust me. It becomes my job to earn that trust, so that you recognize I won't violate some of those boundaries. Now, taking that information and translating it into what a personal life boundary might look like, it's important to note that sometimes a healthy boundary is not oversharing. Sometimes it's not telling the door-to-door salesman all about our family drama, all about the romantic relationships and some of the challenges we may be experiencing there. So really, I wanted to explain this concept of the boundary house, because sometimes it's important to recognize that a healthy way of setting a boundary is choosing which information we share. Sometimes the healthy aspect is choosing not to overshare, even with people that we feel comfortable sharing with. There's probably an appropriate time frame to recognize when I can share some of this information. So if you find yourself feeling uncomfortable sharing certain information, I want you to know that that can be an indicator of a good, solid, healthy relationship. As time progresses and as that trust builds, obviously the information that gets shared becomes more readily available. Anyways, I hope this idea of the boundary house has been helpful. It is important to recognize that there are people in our lives that we should keep on the porch, some who may enter the home and sit in the living room or the family room. And then there are certain people who can raid the fridge and potentially enter the bedroom. I hope that it's been helpful. Comment down below if you have any questions. I don't know that we'll provide any specific information on what you should or shouldn't do, but these would be questions that we could address in a future video. Thanks for sticking around, and I hope that the boundary house is helpful. Have a great day. Bye-bye.